In a quiet suburban neighborhood, where rows of neatly trimmed lawns and colorful flower beds stretched as far as the eye could see, Alex lived a simple life. Their small house stood out not because of its grandeur, but because of the care and attention they put into maintaining it. The front yard was modest yet charming. A mix of green grass, a few potted plants, and a tiny vegetable patch that Alex tended to with pride. It wasn't much, but it brought them joy after long days at work. Across the wooden fence that separated their properties lived Karen, a woman infamous in the neighborhood for her obsession with rules. She was the kind of person who seemed to thrive on control, always making sure everyone followed the Homeowners Association (HOA) guidelines to the letter. If someone hung curtains that didn't match their home's exterior or left their trash cans out past collection day, Karen would be the first to notice and report it. Her own yard was picture perfect, filled with vibrant flowers arranged in precise patterns, each bloom seemingly competing to outshine the others. To many, she came across as intimidating, even nosy, but Alex preferred to keep things cordial. They waved when they saw her, exchanged pleasantries during chance encounters, and avoided stirring up trouble. Despite Karen's reputation, Alex tried hard not to let her antics get under their skin. Life was already busy enough without worrying about what Karen thought of their gardening choices. But recently, Alex had invested in something special. An above-ground irrigation system designed to make watering easier. It was a practical solution, especially during the hot summer months when rainfall became scarce. The thin tubing snaked along the edges of their property, delivering just the right amount of water to keep everything thriving. For Alex, it felt like a small victory, a way to simplify their routine while keeping their garden looking fresh and lively. The HOA rules were strict, but Alex made sure to comply with every detail. They double-checked that the tubing stayed within their property line and didn't obstruct sidewalks or create tripping hazards. Everything was installed according to code, and Alex took pride in knowing they hadn't given Karen, or anyone else, reason to complain. Still, there was an uneasy feeling lingering in the back of their mind. Living next to someone like Karen meant constantly being on guard, never fully relaxing, because you never knew when she might find fault with something. Little did Alex know, this sense of unease was about to grow stronger. One unusually hot afternoon, as the sun blazed down mercilessly, Alex stepped outside to check on their plants. Something felt off. The soil in the vegetable patch looked dry, despite the irrigation system having run earlier that morning. Confused, Alex walked along the tubing, inspecting for leaks or blockages. That's when they noticed something strange. The end of the tubing near the fence seemed disconnected. Kneeling down, Alex realized it hadn't simply come loose. It appeared to have been deliberately rerouted underneath the fence and into Karen's yard. At first, disbelief washed over them. Why would anyone do such a thing? Then suspicion began to creep in. Who else would benefit from stealing water for their flowers? And who else had the audacity to meddle with someone else's property? Alex's jaw tightened as realization dawned. This wasn't just bad luck. It was sabotage. Someone had crossed a line, quite literally, and Alex knew exactly who was behind it. Alex couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that something was seriously wrong. The more they thought about it, the angrier they became. How dare someone tamper with their property? It wasn't just about the water. It was the principle of the matter. Alex had worked hard to set up the irrigation system, following all the rules and making sure everything was done correctly. And now someone had crossed a boundary, both literally and figuratively. Determined to get answers, Alex decided to investigate further. They started by examining the area around the fence where the tubing disappeared into Karen's yard. Sure enough, there were faint drag marks in the dirt, as if the tubing had been pulled forcefully across the ground. Alex frowned. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. But suspicion alone wasn't enough. Alex needed proof before confronting anyone, especially someone like Karen. She was the type of person who would deny everything and then turn the situation around to make Alex look like the guilty party. No, Alex had to be smart about this. That evening after dinner, they went online and ordered a small, discreet security camera. It was designed for outdoor use and promised high-definition footage, even in low light. 2 days later, the package arrived, and Alex installed it immediately, positioning it carefully so it covered the section of the fence near the irrigation line. For the next few nights, Alex kept a close watch on the footage. At first, nothing happened. The neighborhood remained quiet, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. But on the third night, just after midnight, movement appeared on the screen. Alex leaned closer, heart pounding as they watched the figure sneak into view. It was Karen, dressed in dark clothing and moving with surprising stealth for someone so outspoken during the day. She crouched near the fence and began adjusting the tubing. With practiced ease, she redirected it so that the water flowed directly into her own flower beds. Alex felt a mixture of disbelief and outrage. They had suspected Karen from the start, but seeing it unfold right in front of them made it undeniable. Here was proof that Karen had been stealing their water, not just once, but repeatedly. What infuriated Alex most was how brazen she was about it. She didn't even try to hide her actions, acting as though she had every right to take what wasn't hers. The next morning, Alex stepped outside to assess the damage. Their plants were wilting noticeably, deprived of the water they needed to survive. Meanwhile, Karen's flowers looked healthier than ever, bursting with color and vitality. It was clear where their water had gone. Alex clenched their fists, trying to calm the storm of emotions brewing inside them. Part of them wanted to march over to Karen's house right then and there, confront her with the evidence, and demand an explanation. But another part, the smarter, more calculating part, knew that wouldn't solve anything. Confronting Karen without a plan might only escalate the situation and give her a chance to twist the narrative in her favor. Instead, Alex decided to wait. They would let Karen think she'd gotten away with it for a little while longer. In the meantime, Alex began formulating a response, a way to teach her a lesson she wouldn't soon forget. After all, if Karen thought she could steal from her neighbors without consequences, she was about to learn otherwise. For now, Alex bided their time, watching and waiting, letting the anger simmer into determination. Something told them this wasn't going to end quietly, and Alex was ready to make sure justice was served. With the security footage safely saved on their phone, Alex sat down at the kitchen table, replaying the clip of Karen tampering with the irrigation line over and over again. Each time they watched it, their frustration grew. But instead of letting anger consume them, Alex channeled it into something productive, planning a clever way to turn the tables on Karen. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about sending a clear message that no one messed with Alex's property without facing consequences. Alex began researching online, scrolling through gardening forums and DIY websites for ideas. They stumbled upon a few tricks people use to deter pests or deal with invasive plants, and an idea started forming in their mind. What if they could use the same irrigation system Karen had hijacked to deliver something she wouldn't expect? Something harmless but disruptive enough to make her rethink her actions. After some experimentation, Alex settled on a mixture of household items: white vinegar, dish soap, and permanent blue dye. The ingredients were simple, but together they would create a solution that was bound to cause chaos in Karen's prized flower beds. The vinegar would alter the pH level of the soil, making it difficult for her flowers to thrive. The dish soap would act as a surfactant, helping the liquid spread evenly across the ground. And the permanent blue dye, well, that was just for fun, a visual reminder that her greed had backfired spectacularly. Alex couldn't help but smile at the thought of Karen waking up to find her immaculate garden marred by unnatural colors. That evening, after ensuring the neighborhood was quiet and no one was outside, Alex got to work. They mixed the concoction in a large bucket, stirring carefully to ensure everything blended well. Once satisfied with the consistency, they carried it to the irrigation system and poured the entire mixture into the main tube. As the liquid flowed through the tubing, Alex imagined it crossing under the fence and seeping into Karen's soil. It felt almost poetic, using the very system she had stolen from to teach her a lesson. Standing there in the dim light of their porch, Alex allowed themselves a moment of satisfaction. They knew this wouldn't harm Karen physically or permanently damage her property, but it would certainly throw her off balance. For someone who prided herself on perfection, even minor disruptions could feel catastrophic. And honestly, Alex thought, maybe a little disruption is exactly what Karen needed. As the last drops of the mixture disappeared into the tubing, Alex stepped back and surveyed their handiwork. Everything looked normal on the surface. The tubing lay undisturbed, the camera remained hidden, and the night air was still. If anyone walked by, they'd never guess what was happening beneath the surface. Alex went inside, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Tomorrow morning would bring the first signs of their plan coming to life, and Alex couldn't wait to see how Karen would react. Before heading to bed, Alex double-checked the footage one more time, ensuring they had undeniable proof of Karen's wrongdoing. Satisfied that they were prepared for whatever came next, Alex drifted off to sleep, dreaming of justice served, and perhaps imagining the look on Karen's face when she realized her perfect garden wasn't so perfect anymore. The next morning, Alex woke up early, their heart racing with anticipation. They peeked out of the window, scanning Karen's yard for any signs of change. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Her flowers stood tall and colorful, basking in the soft morning sunlight. But as Alex squinted closer, they noticed something odd. The vibrant reds and yellows of her blooms appeared slightly duller than usual, as though something was already taking its toll. Still, it wasn't enough to confirm whether their plan had worked. Unable to resist, Alex grabbed a cup of coffee and stepped outside, pretending to water their own plants while keeping an eye on Karen's side of the fence. Minutes passed, and then it happened. Karen emerged from her house, dressed in her usual crisp outfit, holding a pair of gardening gloves. She walked briskly toward her flower beds, her expression confident and self-assured. But as she knelt down to inspect her prized blooms, her demeanor shifted instantly. Alex watched from afar as Karen froze, her hands hovering over the soil. Her once lush flowers were wilting before her eyes, their leaves curling inward, their stems drooping weakly. Even worse, the ground surrounding them bore a faint bluish tint, impossible to miss against the rich brown earth. Karen scrambled to her feet, pacing back and forth along the edge of her garden, muttering under her breath. She dug her fingers into the soil, examining it closely, clearly baffled by what she saw. Neighbors began to notice too. A few curious heads popped out of windows or poked above fences, whispering among themselves about the sudden decline of Karen's perfect garden. Some even ventured outside, feigning casual strolls past her yard just to get a better look. One elderly woman paused to comment on how strange it all seemed, shaking her head sympathetically. Karen shot her a glare but said nothing, clearly embarrassed by the growing attention. Back in their own yard, Alex struggled to suppress a grin. Watching Karen scramble to figure out what had gone wrong was almost comical. She ran back inside, returning moments later with a hose, desperately trying to wash away the blue tint staining her soil. But no matter how much water she poured, the color refused to fade. Frustration etched itself deeper into her face with each passing minute. She stomped around her yard, muttering angrily, occasionally stopping to yank at a wilted leaf or kick at the dirt. As the morning wore on, Karen's panic only grew. She called a local gardener, pacing furiously while talking on the phone. From what Alex could overhear, she was demanding an emergency consultation, claiming her garden had been attacked overnight. When the gardener arrived, he examined the soil and plants thoroughly, scratching his head in confusion. He suggested it might be a chemical issue, but admitted he'd never seen anything quite like it before. Karen listened impatiently, snapping at him when he couldn't provide immediate answers. Meanwhile, Alex leaned casually against their fence, sipping their coffee and pretending to read a book. Every now and then, they glanced up, catching glimpses of Karen's frantic attempts to salvage her garden. It was hard not to feel a sense of satisfaction, knowing that her carefully curated world was unraveling right before her eyes. The irony wasn't lost on Alex either. Karen had stolen their water to maintain her perfection, and now that same resource had turned against her. By late afternoon, Karen's once immaculate flower beds looked more like a disaster zone. The wilting continued, the blue tint remained stubbornly visible, and her frustration reached new heights. She stormed back into her house, slamming the door behind her. Alex exhaled slowly, realizing this was only the beginning. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Karen would stop at nothing to uncover who, or what, had ruined her precious garden. And when she did, Alex would be ready. By the following day, Karen's mood had shifted from panic to fury. She stormed out of her house early in the morning, her face flushed with anger and her hands clenched into fists. It didn't take long for Alex to realize they were the target of her rage. Marching straight toward their yard, Karen stopped just short of the fence, glaring at Alex as if she could burn a hole through them with her eyes. "What did you do to my garden?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusing. Alex looked up calmly from where they were pruning a small bush, pretending to be surprised by the question. "Your garden," Alex replied, keeping their tone even. "What about it?" Karen's jaw tightened. "Don't play dumb with me. Something's wrong with my flowers, and I know it has something to do with you. Did you put something in the water? Poison or chemicals, or whatever that blue stuff is?" Alex set down their pruning shears and crossed their arms, meeting Karen's gaze steadily. "Funny you should mention the water," they said, letting a hint of sarcasm creep into their voice. "I've been having some issues with my irrigation system lately. It seems like someone's been tampering with it." Karen's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of unease in her expression. "What are you implying?" Instead of answering directly, Alex pulled out their phone and opened the security footage app. With a few taps, they'd brought up the video showing Karen sneaking into their yard late at night, rerouting the tubing under the fence. They turned the screen toward Karen, who froze mid-breath, her face draining of color as she watched herself caught red-handed. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then Karen sputtered, trying to regain her composure. "This proves nothing," she snapped, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. "Even if that's me, it doesn't mean I sabotaged my own garden. You're the one who poisoned it." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? So you're saying I somehow managed to sneak into your yard, pour chemicals into your soil, and make it look like your stolen water caused the damage, all without you noticing?" Karen faltered, her accusations crumbling under the weight of logic. Desperation crept into her tone as she tried to pivot. "Fine, maybe I borrowed your water for a little while. But that doesn't give you the right to ruin my flowers. This is vandalism, and I'll report you to the HOA for this." Alex shook their head, unfazed. "Go ahead and report me. But before you do, maybe you should explain to the HOA why you've been stealing water in the first place. Or better yet, let's show them this video and see what they think." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She knew as well as Alex did that the HOA wouldn't take kindly to someone breaking the rules, especially not someone who prided themselves on enforcing those same rules. For all her bluster, Karen was trapped, and both of them knew it. Finally, after a long pause, she muttered begrudgingly, "Fine. I messed up, okay. I shouldn't have touched your stupid tubing." Her words came out clipped and reluctant, as though admitting fault physically pained her. "But this isn't over." Alex nodded slowly, satisfied that Karen had finally acknowledged her wrongdoing, even if it was only because she had no other choice. "Good. Now maybe we can focus on fixing this mess instead of making it worse." As Karen stalked back to her house, fuming silently, Alex allowed themselves a small smile. The confrontation hadn't escalated into a shouting match, and more importantly, Karen had admitted guilt, something Alex hadn't expected so easily. Still, they knew this wasn't the end. There would be repercussions, likely involving the HOA, but for now, justice had been served. And as Alex returned to tending their garden, they couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of peace. After all, standing up to someone like Karen wasn't just about protecting their property. It was about proving that even the quietest neighbors could hold their ground when pushed too far. The news of Karen's ruined garden spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. By the time the HOA meeting was called, nearly everyone in the community had heard about it. Whispers filled the air as residents gathered in the small community center where these meetings were usually held. Some came out of genuine concern for resolving the issue, while others simply wanted front-row seats to the drama. Alex arrived early, taking a seat near the back of the room, content to let events unfold without drawing too much attention to themselves. Karen showed up late, her usual confident stride replaced by hesitant steps. She wore an oversized blazer that seemed more like armor than clothing, and her hands clutched a folder tightly against her chest. Her face was pale, and dark circles under her eyes hinted at sleepless nights spent worrying about how this would play out. As she took her seat at the front of the room, murmurs rippled through the crowd. It was clear that her reputation as the neighborhood enforcer was on shaky ground. When the meeting began, the HOA president, a middle-aged man named Greg, called for order. After addressing a few routine matters, he turned to the main topic, Karen's garden debacle. "We've received reports," Greg said cautiously, glancing at Karen, "about disturbances involving private property lines and resources. Let's hear from those involved." Karen stood reluctantly, clearing her throat before launching into what sounded like a rehearsed speech. "I admit there may have been a misunderstanding regarding my use of water," she started, avoiding eye contact with anyone in the room. "But I assure you, I never intended to harm my plants or cause any disruption. Someone tampered with my soil, and I believe it's directly related to this so-called misunderstanding." Her words hung awkwardly in the air. Before anyone could respond, Alex raised their hand calmly. When Greg nodded in their direction, Alex stood and addressed the group. "If we're being honest here," they began, their voice steady and composed, "the real misunderstanding lies in Karen rerouting my irrigation line without permission. I have evidence proving she tampered with my property multiple times." With that, Alex pulled up the security footage on their phone and connected it to the projector screen set up in the room. The video played clearly for everyone to see. Karen sneaking into Alex's yard late at night, adjusting the tubing, and redirecting it into her own garden. Gasps echoed around the room as neighbors exchanged shocked glances. Even Greg looked surprised, his pen hovering over his notepad as he watched the footage intently. When the clip ended, silence fell over the room. Karen shifted uncomfortably, her face now flushed red. She tried to defend herself again, stammering excuses about how she only borrowed the water temporarily and didn't mean to hurt anyone, but her arguments fell flat against the undeniable proof displayed on the screen. Finally, Greg spoke up. "Karen, this is a serious violation of HOA rules," he said firmly. "Stealing water, tampering with someone else's property. It's unacceptable behavior, especially coming from someone who's always emphasized compliance." He paused, consulting his notes before continuing. "You'll be fined accordingly, and you're responsible for repairing any damages caused to Alex's property. Additionally, we expect you to restore your garden to its original condition." Karen opened her mouth to protest, but quickly closed it when she saw the disapproving looks from her fellow neighbors. For once, she had no comeback, no sharp retort to deflect blame onto someone else. Defeated, she sank back into her chair, clutching her folder even tighter. As the meeting wrapped up, Alex felt a mix of relief and vindication. The HOA had handled the situation fairly, and Karen's actions had finally caught up with her. Outside the community center, several neighbors approached Alex, congratulating them for standing up to Karen. One elderly woman patted Alex's shoulder and said, "It's about time someone put her in her place." Though tension still lingered in the neighborhood, the balance of power had shifted. Karen's authority, and her carefully cultivated image, was cracked beyond repair. And for Alex, that was enough. In the weeks that followed the HOA meeting, life in the neighborhood began to settle into a new rhythm. Karen kept mostly to herself, avoiding eye contact with her neighbors and retreating behind closed doors whenever someone passed by her house. Her once immaculate flower beds remained a shadow of their former glory, the stubborn blue tint clinging to the soil like a permanent scar. No amount of replanting or soil treatments seemed to erase it, serving as a constant reminder of her misdeeds. The sight of those bluish patches became a quiet joke among the neighbors, who whispered about how perfect Karen's garden used to be. Alex, on the other hand, found themselves enjoying an unexpected sense of peace. With Karen no longer meddling in everyone's business, the neighborhood felt lighter, less suffocating. People started loosening up. Curtains mismatched here and there, lawns grew slightly wilder, and even a few quirky lawn ornaments appeared overnight. It was as if the entire community had collectively exhaled after years of living under Karen's watchful glare. Neighbors who had previously avoided Alex now greeted them warmly, grateful for the role they played in taking Karen down a peg. To prevent any future incidents, Alex decided to upgrade their irrigation system. They replaced the old tubing with a more secure setup, adding locks and protective covers to ensure it couldn't be tampered with again. While installing the new system, Alex also took the opportunity to expand their garden, planting additional flowers and herbs that thrived under their care. Their yard transformed into a vibrant oasis, drawing compliments from passersby and becoming a symbol of resilience against pettiness. Karen, meanwhile, struggled to rebuild her reputation. She attended the next few HOA meetings, but spoke only when spoken to, her usual domineering presence noticeably absent. Some residents pitied her, while others relished seeing her humbled. A few tried to extend olive branches, inviting her to block parties or casual gatherings, but Karen declined most invitations, seemingly unable to shake off her embarrassment. Over time, she faded into the background, becoming just another face in the crowd, rather than the self-appointed enforcer she once was. For Alex, the whole ordeal served as a lesson in standing up for oneself without stooping to cruelty. Yes, they had retaliated against Karen's theft, but they had done so thoughtfully, ensuring their actions were proportionate and non-destructive. The vinegar soup blue dye mixture hadn't caused lasting harm. It was merely a wake-up call. And judging by the way things turned out, it worked exactly as intended. As summer gave way to autumn, Alex reflected on everything that had happened. They realized that sometimes justice isn't about grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. It's about holding firm to your principles and refusing to let others trample over you. By exposing Karen's hypocrisy and forcing accountability, Alex not only protected their own property, but also inspired others to stand up for themselves too. One crisp October morning, Alex stepped outside to admire their flourishing garden. The air smelled faintly of earth and fallen leaves, and the golden sunlight bathed their yard in warmth. Across the fence, Karen's garden still bore traces of its infamous blue hue, though her flowers had begun to recover slightly. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Alex offered a small, polite nod. Karen hesitated before nodding back, a flicker of acknowledgement passing between them, not forgiveness, necessarily, but perhaps a mutual understanding. Life went on, quieter and sweeter than before. Alex continued tending to their garden, finding joy in the simple act of nurturing something beautiful. And though Karen remained a part of the neighborhood, her influence waned, replaced by a newfound spirit of cooperation and kindness among the residents. In the end, what started as a dispute over water had blossomed into something far greater, a community learning to grow together, one step at a time.